Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Sanctuary's Coffee and Conversation Show. I'm Myrna Haskell, Executive Editor of Sanctuary Magazine. This is an online publication with a focus on the arts, philanthropy, health and wellness, culture, and community. You can find us at sanctuary-magazine.com. This morning, my guest is Marisa Moeller. She is the founder of the Alternative Therapist Partnership, which provides both cognitive therapy and a variety of alternative therapies. She is also the host of the popular Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive podcast, which I highly recommend to listeners. And she's a gold sponsor of Sanctuaries. Good morning, Marisa. Thank you so much for joining me again on the show.
Good morning, Myrna. Thank you so much for having me back on.
And, I just want to tell listeners that, this time of year, of course, we're dealing with the hustle and bustle and smiling children's faces and holiday parties and visiting family and friends. But there is a portion of our community that's dealing with grief. And Marisa and I got together a couple months ago and we said, the holiday time is really, really difficult for those folks out there who've experienced tragedy or have lost a loved one. And then this time of year, with everything that's going on, it could make things even more difficult for them. So our topic today is grief, a personal journey. And we were thinking about the journey because it is, of course, personal for everyone. So Marisa, I wanted to start out, and I know a lot of people sort of know about the stages of grief, but I thought maybe that might be a good springboard to our conversation to talk about that. And then also the fact that perhaps, and I don't know, you're the expert, not me, not everyone follows those exact steps or in that exact order. So I'm going to give you the floor right now so you can talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I feel that most of us have heard at one time or another the 5 stages of grief. I believe it was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross who coined these terms or these types of stages, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And as I said, I'm fairly certain that most of us have heard this one time or another. But the reality is that these are not set in stone because grief is not really linear. You're not going to walk through these stages in a straight line. Grief comes in waves and spirals. It comes in circles, and it is different for different people. Even the same people in the family grieving for the same individual do not go through grief the same way. And that's something really important to understand, because oftentimes we've heard, oh, it's time to get over it, or, oh, she's going through this and it's taking too long, or this person's still grieving. How could this be happening? Every individual is exactly that, an individual. And it does take time, and it looks different depending on the person. It's almost like a DNA or a fingerprint. It is unique to the individual.
Very interesting. I'm so glad you brought up that fact that people even from the same family might react differently. And, the horrible situation with parents who've lost a young child, for instance. I've heard that sometimes, that can either make the couple stronger or it can start to break the marriage apart because of the grief. And lots of times they're experiencing the grief in very, very different ways, even though they're the parents of the same child. And that's just one example, I guess. But yeah, I agree with you, Marisa, that that's such an important thing to focus on, that everybody's not the same, even within the same family, and that we have to have the hearts and minds to kind of understand that and support people where they are, right?
Right, exactly. This is really what it's all about, understanding, because make no mistake that societal issues, social pressures, the way in which individuals have been raised, that all enters into it. So we've maybe not today, because the younger people are breaking this mold, but a long time ago, men had to be strong. They couldn't show their emotions. They couldn't cry. They were supposed to be the breadwinner. They were supposed to be the strength of the family. And so they're coming at grief from a different angle. And so often it's not understood the same way that it would be, or maybe made allowances for in a man as it is in a woman. And so that also has a lot to do with it. And it really is individual. It really is that everyone is walking into it and not coming through on the other side. You are now becoming a new individual with this new grief coming with you. It comes along with you. It may not be um, as uh, spine tingling, as painful, as earth shattering from as it was in the start, but it's coming with you. It never goes away.
Yeah, it's coming with you. It never goes away. That's really interesting, and I think a really important point. Since we're talking about stages, just as a therapist, and I know you've dealt with this before, is there a certain way you treat perhaps someone who comes to you who's very new to the grief? Something's happened very recently, and I kind of have this as a two-part conversation or question. People who aren't experts like you or therapists, the layman or the non-professional. Lots of times you might run into a neighbor, somebody that's not super close, but you still care about the person and you don't know what to say or what to do because there's been a recent tragedy that's happened in that person's life. So I was hoping you could talk to both halves of that question from the therapist point of view and then from the non-professional, not knowing what to say to someone or what to do.
Well, I will say that, of course, there are therapeutic techniques. However, we're all human beings. And if someone comes to me as a professional coming, I'm really there as a sounding board, as a mirror, as a silent witness. And I think that that's the best way to approach clients because they don't want to hear that you'll get over it or this is natural and this happens to everyone and that there are tragedies on the planet that go unexplained and you just bombard them with statements and that's not necessarily helpful for them. In fact, it can actually harm them. So being the silent witness is the most important thing, allowing them to unravel and unfold what's going on with them at that moment, with the grief, who they're grieving for, what they're grieving for, and allowing them to really be center stage, letting them talk if they want. Sometimes they just cry and you hand them the box of tissues and you just stay silent in there. That is sometimes the best thing to do, just to hold the space. And often we can do that really as individuals. You don't have to be a professional. Of course, you feel like you want to say, I'm so sorry for what you're going through, my deepest sympathies. But you can just be there in silence. If there's anything I can do, if there's any time that you'd like to just sit and I can be there with you. As long as you're there with the individual, I think that that's one of the most important things to do, to let them know that there's another human being there next to them, that really you don't even have to say anything.
I love that. Can I just sit with you? And I heard from you too that you don't want to say things like this happens to everyone, especially from your perspective, obviously, as a therapist, but just the layman too, because we just finished saying it doesn't happen to everybody the same way. And every circumstance is different from, losing an elderly parent, which is also very, very hard, but to something that's a lot more sudden, or losing somebody who's very young. There's so many different circumstances and things that go into it, right? So it's
absolutely.
saying, everybody goes through it. I could see where that could be the total wrong thing to say.
Yes, or you'll get over this, or you'll go, or in time will heal all wounds, or this too will pass. Even if those things are true for some people, for many people, there's no need to say it. You're sitting and holding space for the individual exactly at where they are at the moment. Because after all, this is another important thing, that once we're working through these stages, as I said, they're circular, they come in waves, spirals. We're carrying this all differently at the end. There's no two people carrying the grief the same way. Even husband and wife, even siblings, they're not carrying it the same way, and it will be different. Even when some have come through stages sooner than others, it will always be that you're carrying it differently. And that's really important to recognize in one human being to another.
Do you suggest at all that someone, let's say it's a neighbor, like somebody that you know pretty well, but you're not part of the family or like a lifelong friend person, but then you say, is there anything that I can do? Is it important to like give an example, like, can I send some food over to your house? Or is that better than like just a generic statement that you'd like to help them in some way?
Yes. I would think especially with neighbors, because you don't want to, you want to express your sympathy to the individual's family, but you don't want to overstep your bounds. You
Right,
certainly don't want to be in the middle of the family grief and what they need to do at that time.
right,
But you can say, I hope you don't mind, I'll drop something off for you. And then you just drop it off. You
right.
can do that.
And
Yes.
then you've given them that space to like know
Yes.
that you might drop something at the front door or whatever
Right.
without
Right.
feeling like you're coming there unannounced or that they really want to just hole up at home and not receive visitors. I think that's what makes people so uncomfortable, Marissa, that because everybody grieves differently, some people that I even know personally want a lot of people around. They don't want to be home because
True.
home is depressing to them. So they want to be out and about. They want to be doing things with other people because it takes their mind off the grief.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're just in the house and at home, they just it's way worse for them. Let's just put it
Right.
that way.
And you
But then
can.
there's people the opposite, right? So
Oh, exactly. There are people who want to be alone. They want to sit with their grief silently. But there are those that, yes, absolutely, they want to be out in the world. They want to feel the vibrancy of other individuals. And you can, as for example, as a neighbor, you can say, if you'd like to go somewhere, if you need me to take you somewhere or attend something with you, just let me know. And then you open the
I
door
like
for
that.
them to be able to say, I want to go for lunch one day. Maybe they will approach you that way because that's what they need at that moment. Because really, it's all about the individual who's grieving.
That's right. That's right. And I just experienced that actually very recently with a friend who lost her life partner. So, I think responding to the person's wishes and how they want to be and how they want to work through the grief and going with them, sort of traveling that path with them, then is the best. To not assume that they want one thing or another because it is so individual. What about though, like families? Because you mentioned families. I'll just give an example. Say someone loses a child, there's other siblings still in the household that are dependents that are being cared for by parents. Do you suggest at all to clients that because it can be very different, as you mentioned, even between family members, that they sort of have just within themselves have group sessions or talk out, what's happening to them so that they can understand each other and where they are. Like maybe somebody's very angry and somebody's very depressed and doesn't
Right.
want to come out of their bedroom. And do you have any suggestions for families in that way?
Well, again, I feel that understanding is really what's needed. That's
Okay.
the utmost because there are no perfect words. There's no perfect scenario. There's no perfect meeting. Everybody has to be able to grieve the loss in their own way and in a very real way. And so then that does soften the grief, but you can't force individuals to partake of family members say, oh, we have to talk about this, or we have to bring this up, or we have to have a meeting about it, or or don't say anything. Sometimes it's often that way too, right? Don't express your grief, or keep it to yourself, or scream in your own room. And we have to really understand the position of the other individual. And that's,
Right.
I think, is really what's hard, especially if you yourself are going through the grief at the same
I was
time,
just going to say
right?
that.
How do
Yeah,
you,
it's so hard
yes, it is. How do you
because you're trying to
step
support the other
aside?
people in your
Yeah.
family, but you're dealing with your own grief. That's yeah, that's that's really difficult. What about, okay, so we talked a little bit about how people experience it differently, but I've read a lot about actual physical
Oh,
symptoms
of
and
course.
I mean, there's lack of sleep, there's exhaustion from all of everything you have to do, maybe to prepare for a funeral or whatever. You're not sleeping, you're not eating. Headaches, I've heard about, being reported. All these different ways that that the grief presents physically. So I know that there's probably folks listening out there that are experiencing some of this. So I was hoping you might be able to give a little bit of advice
Well,
to
first
help
of all,
people
make no
navigate that
yeah,
physical aspect of
yeah.
grief.
Well, I do want to say that, of course, it is very much physical. And once again, it affects every individual differently. So someone will get holding their breath, others will hunch over, some will get pains in their neck or their back or their arms will go numb. So it very much does happen to many people. And it's not that it's really not happening often. That part, the physical part, often seems to be something that even the professionals, many times in the medical field, don't want to admit that it's happening. They think that it's more psychosomatic, but whether it is or it isn't, it's real to the individual that it's happening to at the time. I say that taking deep breaths and being in the moment is so important for the individual who's grieving. Even if they don't know how to be in the moment, be with your grief. Take the time to meditate. Take the time to lay down and take some deep breaths in. That you're entitled to that. You don't have to always be standing at attention or being on and carrying everything with you, because it will and can do damage to you physically, emotionally, mentally. You have to have an outlet for all of that, whatever that outlet is for you. Some people want to run on a ball field, or they want to run around a track, and that's perfectly fine too, if that's how they feel that they need to deal with it. But it does in fact happen. There are very, very different aches and pains and areas of the body that will absorb all of that.
And
So
that's
it is
that
something to
whole
think about.
body,
The
mind, body
somatic, yes.
connection, right?
Yes, of course, of course. And we know it happens to us even in stress, right? Stress happens. It happens to us with stress. Of course, it's going to happen to us with grief. And it affects everybody differently, some more than others, and some it takes longer than others to feel better or to not feel as much of that pain that they initially have. And that too takes time. That's a process too.
I think I'm hearing too, there has to be a self-acceptance, like giving self-grace. Like you mentioned, if you just want to go lie down, that's okay. Don't feel like, oh, I'm missing this, or I'm not making dinner, or I'm like whatever that
And,
is. It's okay. Go lie down. If that's
and
if
you're going
that's
to
what
be
you
fatigued.
feel you need to do for yourself,
Right.
right?
And you're going to be fatigued, right? You're going to feel physical fatigue, especially if you're going to have services. Just assume if an individual passes away,
Okay.
a parent, a spouse, a child. You're going to have some people want services, some people want a memorial, some people want to have others over. That's going to physically tire you.
Yeah.
You might have to do a few things. You might have to concentrate on getting certain tasks done. And that takes a lot of mental and physical strength. And so you will feel fatigued, and you may not want to make dinner, and you may not want to take a shower or get out of your pajamas. You may want
Right.
to sit and relax for a week or two. And that's perfectly fine, because again, everyone deals with it differently, and you have a right to deal with it differently. You have a right to take that time for yourself.
And we talk about self-care so much at Sanctuary because I think for all kinds of reasons, as we know, people forget about that piece, right? And this is a time in particular where people might forget about it, like I have to take care of myself because I'm really like falling apart, and I have to allow other people to help, right? That's probably something, you're not thinking straight at times, but allow others who are willing to step in and do some of those things so that you're not exhausted, right?
Right. Yeah, of course. You can accept help. It's not a failure. It's not wrong to
Yeah.
accept help. It's actually important to accept help, because um, so often it's another pair of eyes on something, because you are maybe distracted, you are maybe fatigued. you are grieving. So it is wonderful when someone else comes and helps you um, to move forward through this.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's a really, really good point. We mentioned the holidays at the beginning of this, and of course, it's December 18th, and folks are, doing all kinds of things, going to different places and parties and things like that. And so I think that exacerbates almost the grief somebody's feeling because they're seeing all of that going on, all of the holiday celebration type things going on. So particularly for family members, maybe not even members that are absolutely directly affected with whatever has happened, but those close folks in the family or extended family or even lifelong friends, what can they do particularly during this time, this holiday time, that makes grieving so much more difficult for a lot of people? Is there anything family members and close
Well,
friends
first of
can
all,
do?
grieving during holiday times, it's twofold. There are those that are grieving possibly for the loss of individuals. And so the holiday comes around and they're reflecting on the loss of the individual. But there are other individuals who are grieving just the entire idea of the holiday. So there is that as well, because they're grieving the fact that they they may perceive that how their life is going is not the way it should be, when in all reality, it's whatever one makes of it. So, but oftentimes we are our worst enemy, our worst critic. And so there are those that grieve just coming to the holidays because they feel that perhaps they're not having the type of life that others are having. And so that's another type of grief
Or
too.
they don't want to
That's
depress
very real.
others, maybe, right? They don't want to, they feel like, oh, I'm going to be there and I'm depressed. And so,
Some may, but some may feel angry because they see that their life is different. Some grieve the very fact that things that are lost to them or they feel that they've lost. So there's a lot of different types of grief that goes on, especially during the holidays.
and
Um,
there's that empty chair at the table too,
yes,
right? If
that
you
is
think of
well, if you're
that.
grieving the loss of an individual, that is severely painful to individuals, especially if it's happened either recently or around a holiday. There are times where it's happened around a holiday, and then all the years to come, it's still always there. It's never going to go away. As I said before, you're carrying it differently, but it's still there. And you can do many, many things to um, honor that individual. Uh,
That's
you
nice.
can honor, right? You can honor the individual. You can honor the individual through doing something for someone else, doing something with someone else. And even people who are not grieving, I say reach out. There's no reason why you couldn't um, make an extra effort to say hello to a neighbor or contact a friend that you maybe haven't talked to in a while. And I know we're all busy, but even to squeeze out um, a little bit to talk to them or to make a lunch date, sometimes that means the world to someone. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really what it's all about, right? The humanity of us all.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. Um, you know, there are times though, probably, where people think, a lot of time has passed and they see that a person is really truly struggling. And what I kind of mean by that is maybe they're not able to handle like daily responsibilities or daily grooming, even that kind of thing, and it seems like a lot of time has passed. Is there anything that loved ones should look for where they realize something needs to happen here? Maybe this person needs some professional help because they're not dealing with life anymore, kind of thing. Is there anything you can give us advice on there?
That I say tread carefully because you
Yeah.
really don't want to impose your beliefs on another individual.
Okay.
You may believe that you see something happening, but you may offend the individual, anger the individual. There are ways to try to see if they can perhaps join a group first. I would think that
Oh,
sometimes a
okay.
group may be better than bombarding an individual with, you have to go to therapy. You have to talk to someone professional. You need help. Those may often backfire. And the person that you're speaking to about this may feel attacked, assaulted,
Okay.
wronged. And so there are ways to better get them to perhaps seek some help, maybe even speaking to a medical doctor first, because they feel that maybe in medicine, it might be physical first, and they speak to the medical doctor first about how they're physically feeling, and then it can go from there, because it's very difficult to force someone
I know.
to
And see,
want to
that's
get help.
another one of those kind of situations where you don't know what to do, but you're really concerned because you feel like the person isn't able to even sort of care for themselves because they've either, locked themselves in their room or they're not able to take care of young children or whatever it is. So you're saying don't make a flat out suggestion, but maybe, I mean, is there a way we could bring up, oh, I heard about this group that's really helping some folks.
Mhm.
Is that okay to say, is that something you'd be comfortable with without saying, I think it's been too long. You need to get up and start, living your daily
Well,
life again. I'm not suggesting that it's that, but just,
I
this is
think it's
another
also
one of those
difficult, right?
sticky areas. I
Mhm.
understand,
Well, first of all, you're going to speak. Well, it depends, right? You're going to speak often to a family member differently than you might speak to a coworker or a
Right.
neighbor.
Oh, a
That's
coworker,
the first
I don't
thing,
even
right?
think I would go there. But I mean, if it
Right.
is a family member, um,
And
and
the key is getting them stabilized, right? We may
right,
not be able to have them thrive, right? You're not going to thrive in a week. You're not going to thrive in a month. You're not going to go back to the way you were, but we're trying to stabilize the individual. So how
right.
does one do that? A conversation, maybe a program, watch a program first, watch a program, hand them a book, hand them,
Oh, that's a great
information to a
idea.
podcast that they could possibly listen to.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not as frightening, especially a podcast, some sort of programming where they can actually listen to that on their own, right? They don't have to
Yeah.
be with
And in the
anybody.
privacy of
Yes,
a room where
yes.
they're all by themselves. And the book
Hmm.
too. I like that. Oh, I love those two ideas,
Hmm.
Marissa.
Yes.
So that's a great way for those of you listening. And you're not sure what to do. There you go. That's a positive way without stepping over, over a boundary that you don't want
Right.
to step over or making the person angry or feel bad about it. It's such a ginormous and individual
Hmm.
situation we're talking about here. I mean, there's so many different situations, different personalities, different environments, where things are just going to happen differently. But do you have any like last thoughts that you want listeners to know about this topic, particularly at the holiday season? Anything else you'd like to say that we haven't discussed so far?
Well, I really would like to tell each individual, don't ever be afraid to extend that hand, that help, that smile, um, that conversation. You never know how that person that you hand that over to needs it for that minute. It's so important. And you don't have to get into all their personal information. It doesn't have to be that you're going to have a long conversation or an in-depth analysis of what's going on, but just the fact of making that human contact, that could mean the world to someone. That could actually be the linchpin for them feeling that they can then talk to others, or they can go get help, or they can join a group, or they can get that lunch outside with a girlfriend or a neighbor or a family member. It might be the push that they need. So I always say, don't ever feel that you extending yourself to someone, even in a smile, would make it bad for them. It's always going to make their world a little better.
Yeah, or a hug if that's appropriate.
Right.
Hugs do,
True. True.
smiles and hugs, I think, do a lot more than people
Hmm.
realize, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It does indeed.
Well, thank you, Marissa, for all of this because it's such an important topic. And, people, I think you've given people a lot to think about in terms of how you can approach somebody because I know in particular that's really hard for a lot of folks. They don't know what to do or say. And you've given us a lot to think about and a lot of ways that we can navigate that. So I really appreciate it. Now, our regular listeners and readers recognize you and know you, of course, because you've been in our community for a long time. But is there anything what's going on in Marisa's world? Is there anything, I think you had told me earlier today that you're recording another podcast or anything
Yes,
that's
I am.
happening that you'd like to tell our listeners about?
Yes, I am. Well, of course, I do have a program that runs every Thursday evening. It's on YouTube and Spotify as well. Spotify, you can get both video and audio. Many people can only listen, especially if they're at work. So that is a regular, that's been going on almost 3 years now.
I
Almost three
know, I
years
can't
that
believe
it's
it.
on, yes.
Yes.
And yeah, and of course there's a lot of social media that I'm on all platforms of social media, and I have a lot of contact with a lot of individuals. So there's always something out there for someone to hear and someone to make contact if they want, if they need. I'm always there to help. I think that that's really the most important thing. That as I'm there to listen and I'm there to help.
And for listeners, when you do go to Marisa's website at yourecreate.com, we'll have that in the credits. You'll see different reviews from clients of hers who really feel good about the way she approaches individual challenges. And so contact information is there too. I know Marisa, if anybody would like to contact Marisa, you can go ahead and check out all those things, her social media pages and her website. And please also check out the podcast because she
And
has
I
really a wide range of guests who share their experiences and how they've come through hard times and all of that. So please take a look at that Radiant Living podcast as well. So I'd like to thank you, Marisa. This has been a really, really good and important episode, I think, today, and I truly appreciate your time. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. And I do want to say that I will list a few places. If anybody feels that they need to speak with someone, they feel that they have to reach out. Many times there are anonymous places as well. So I will provide that for your readers out there so you can have that,
Thank you.
links.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I'll close as I always do by wishing all of our listeners and our readers good health, happiness, and continued inspiration. And I wish everybody a safe and healthy holiday season with their families as well. Thank you so much, Marisa, and take care, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holiday.